Picture this. You just finished fighting Loretta at the end of the Haley Tree. You've survived getting knocked over by the incredibly annoying bubble snipers, avoided getting mauled to death by giant ants, and got through an unreasonable amount of reused enemies in the Haley Tree town. What's your reward for all of this? You ask yourself as you climb down a suspiciously long ladder leading to an equally long elevator ride down, only to be greeted with... I'm sure many of us have experienced some variation of the same chain of events. The frustration, the mystery, and finally, the awe of discovering such a massive city so far away from anything you've explored until now. The sheer scale of the architecture, the never-ending sea in the distance, the haunting strings that play in the background. It's hard to forget your first entrance into Elphael. Why is it then that it's almost never in the discussion when talking about Elden Ring's strongest legacy dungeons? So many times I've heard people praise Stormveil Castle, Leyendell, and Raya Lucaria, but almost never Elphael. This is what I seek to explore in today's video. We'll try to piece together what makes Elphael's atmosphere so powerful. We'll also take a look at its lore, its gameplay and level design, and finally try to determine why it isn't held in such high regard as other areas in Elden Ring. So then let's begin, shall we? From the moment you first enter Elphael, something feels different. While places like Leyendell and Stormveil evoke a feeling of awe and wonder, Elphael feels strangely somber in comparison. While the music is definitely a contributing factor, I think there's something a bit more subtle going on. The buildings themselves feel weathered, as if they could crumble to dust at any moment. The knights guarding the many streets of Elphael seem oddly dejected, almost like something is secretly eating away at them. The blood-red growths that litter every corner and crevice of the city reveal a very important detail. Elphael is plagued, not just its inhabitants, but the very land itself has been ravaged by the scarlet rot. The plant life, the water, the entire city seems to be slowly rotting away. Even the Order of the Cleanrot Knights, one of the strongest factions in the entirety of the Lands Between, hasn't been spared by the infection. They stand unnaturally, clutching their weapons for support as if they could fall over at the slightest disturbance. Their once proud march has now been reduced to a painful limp. Root-like growths can be seen protruding out of their armor, suggesting that maybe they could be under some kind of influence. But regardless of whether they're being controlled or not, they have undoubtedly had quite the fall from grace. The city's affliction is made even more apparent once we reach the drainage channel. The water has turned a disgusting shade of brownish red, forming a waterfall and pouring directly onto the Haley Tree's roots, surely worsening its condition. The rot here is so strong it seems to have created its own ecosystem, as the city's usual inhabitants of foot soldiers and armored guards have disappeared completely, instead being replaced by the parasitic kindreds of rot. The cocoons of these insect-like beings litter the streets and halls of Elphael, and seem to facilitate some sort of twisted metamorphosis. But despite being so utterly dilapidated, some parts of Elphael still maintain a sort of melancholic beauty. Surely we all remember trudging through the drainage channel and being rewarded with this beautiful view of the city afterwards. The sheer contrast of the two areas is utterly striking. A big contributing factor to this is the lighting, which in the case of Elphael is noticeably brighter than the Haley Tree before it. I know I've already talked about the initial entrance into the city, but the first view of Elphael, with the intense golden glow seeping out from behind the clouds, almost reminds me of Anor Londo. From Software's brilliant use of lighting makes even the most unremarkable places memorable, like this door near the inner wall. What could possibly be on the other side? Another cool detail about Elphael's design that's hidden in plain sight is its function. While you might not think too hard about Elphael's title of Brace of the Haley Tree, it's actually meant quite literally. Unlike the majority of architecture in Elden Ring, which mostly just sprawls out in random directions, the entirety of Elphael is concentrated around the Haley Tree's base, providing it the necessary structural support. Now all of the seemingly useless arches and towers protruding far beyond the sea line finally make sense. Elphael wasn't just made to serve as a traditional city, but as a literal brace for the Haligtree. Speaking of the Haligtree, I think it's time we finally take a look at the actual story behind Elphael's creation. Having a good atmosphere is useless if an area's lore is subpar, but thankfully, that isn't the case for Elphael. The city's abandonment, its infection, its suffering can all be traced down to just two people, Miquella and Malenia. Like most things in the lands between, Elphael's current state is almost entirely due to the meddling of the demigods. But before examining the effects of the twin prodigies' actions, we must first familiarize ourselves with their curses. Let's start with Malenia. Malenia's curse is quite straightforward. She's infected with the scarlet rot. More than infected, actually. Malenia is a vessel for the outer god of rot, spreading its influence and infection unknowingly throughout the lands between, and most importantly, throughout Elphael. Many attempts have been made to heal her, most of them helmed by her brother Miquella, but none of them have come to fruition. She now resides at the base of the Haligtree, with her and the city she resides in slowly succumbing to her illness. Miquella's curse, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated. The game would have you think that his curse is eternal childhood, and that is true to some extent, but I think it goes a bit deeper than that. Each of Marika and Radagon's children is cursed in some way, with each of them having a butterfly representing said curse. Mesmer has the black pyrefly, Melina has the smoldering butterfly, Malenia has the Aeonian butterfly, and Miquella has the nascent butterfly, which, believe it or not, could clue us into the true nature of his malediction. When something is nascent, it means it has only recently formed, but is likely to grow larger in the future, or in other words, something that is only now beginning to show signs of promise. But to be cursed with nascency, however, is to never reach your full potential, to never have your goals be fulfilled, which I think is exactly what's happening to Miquella. Arguably his grandest achievement, the Haligtree, was meant to be a replacement for the failing Erdtree, helping Miquella usher in a new age of his own. Miquella did not stop there, however. The Haligtree needed something to support it, so Miquella built Elphael, a city that could serve as his own royal capital, and where he could ensure that the Haligtree's growth went unimpeded. But the Haligtree never fully grew. It remained stagnant, rotten, and Miquella, kidnapped, never to see his kingdom come to fruition. Everything he's done is incomplete in some way, even his own body, unable to grow past that of a young child. And so Elphael lays in a depressing stasis, having now lost its purpose, doomed to one day be consumed by Malenia's rot. It remains a remnant of a forgotten era, one fueled by youthful ambition, and one that ended before it could even begin. Now that we've covered what makes Elphael so unique lore-wise, it's time to see how it holds up in the level design department, and thankfully, it doesn't disappoint in that either. Like many of From Software's best dungeons, you feel like you're carving your own unintended path through Elphael, even though that's exactly what the developers wanted you to do. The unique thing about Elphael, however, is that it achieves that while still being quite linear. Unlike a dungeon like Leyndell or Elphael, which are sprawling cityscapes with winding pathways and numerous ways to get lost, the main chunk of Elphael, that being the run from the prey room to the drainage channel, is mostly just a straight line with minimal diversions. The reason it's still able to feel like those massive non-linear cities is actually due to a really neat level design trick. Let's look at the area I mentioned earlier. The path between the prey room and the drainage channel is divided into 3 lanes of different elevations, with them converging and diverging at various points, allowing for a multitude of ways of traversal. Take the leftmost route, for example, the most straightforward of the 3. Following this path to the end will lead you headfirst into a group of elite Haligtree Knights and a Rotten Tree Sentinel, guarding the entrance to the next site of grace. Surely, taking them head-on isn't the most efficient way of handling this encounter, The game would happen to agree as well, as right at the end of the first path, you can climb a tree branch that allows you to cross over to the opposite side, allowing you to safely dispose of the archers guarding the aforementioned entrance. You still need to jump down and sneak past the tree sentinel though, which could lead to a death if you aren't careful, but a keen-eyed player would have noticed this buttress extending far above the entrance, which upon climbing, reveals a hidden balcony that allows you to skip the encounter altogether. The developers trust the player to figure this out on their own, only placing small environmental clues that might hint the player to alternate paths. Maybe some destroyed railing here or a protruding edge there, nothing too obvious, but nothing that would be impossible to notice on your own. Another way to traverse the city is dropping down to the street in the middle, and if you manage to survive the onslaught of royal revenants, you'll be rewarded with a ladder leading directly to the entrance to the inner wall, allowing you to safely run past the enemies guarding it. Each path having its own risk versus reward factor is what prevents Elphael from feeling stale despite its straightforward layout. The amount of thought put into every fork in the road, every barely reachable ledge, every almost survivable fall is what, in my opinion, what makes Elphael one of the best designed areas in From Software history. But unfortunately, the one area where I think Elphael completely misses the mark is the one area it had to get right: the gameplay. Instead of having unique enemies tailor-made to fit in with the city's lore and setting, it copies and pastes the same enemies from all around the game, this time with grossly inflated health pools and damage values. Not a single enemy found in Elphael is unique to it. Even the Cleanrot Knights, arguably its most memorable foes, have been seen in other places such as the Swamp of Aeonia and the Shaded Castle. This lack of original enemies just makes the gameplay feel like an afterthought, like From Software designed this gorgeous city only to populate it with the same enemies you've been fighting for the last 80 hours. It only serves to weaken the experience, because now, instead of focusing on the city's beautiful scenery or its amazing interconnected level design, all you can think about is how you'd rather do anything else but fight Erdtree Avatar number 17. The absolute worst case of repeated boss usage in Elphael is this putrid tree spirit in the drainage channel. It ticks all the boxes for being a terrible encounter. Inflated health pool? Check. Absurd damage output? Check. Boss you fought literally a dozen times? Check. And the cherry on top? It's in the middle of a poison swamp. Just leaving this part of the map empty would have provided a better, more enjoyable gameplay experience, but as it stands now, it offers nothing new to the player in terms of learning a new moveset or becoming better at the game. It just serves to add more tedium to an already tedious experience. Another reason why Elphael falls apart gameplay-wise are the terrible gank fights it seems insistent on putting you through. The Cleanrot Knights, for example, a great enemy on paper. Their attacks are fun to dodge, there's great rhythm to their fight, but put two of them together, alongside a bunch of other enemies in a claustrophobic room, it's like you're begging the player to hate them. It reminds me of this area in the Ringed City, where 3 ringed knights are just haphazardly placed down next to each other. Another encounter where the enjoyability of the fight is sacrificed just to add more difficulty. Same thing with the Erdtree Avatar surrounded by knights and ballistas. I know I praised this encounter earlier because of how many ways FromSoft gave you to skip it, but if you actually choose to fight them, it's absolute torture. But unfortunately, that's just the price of being in a game as massive as Elden Ring. Having each area require its own set of unique enemies and bosses would have required an unsurmountable amount of effort. You're bound to cut corners somewhere. It's just disappointing that Elphael's amazing atmosphere and level design were squandered by having it house some of the most frustrating encounters FromSoft has ever conceived. It's almost funny in a meta-narrative kind of way, like of course the city whose entire lore revolves around the idea of never reaching its full potential was a victim to rush development, thus leading it to never reaching its full potential. And this is ultimately why I think Elphael isn't regarded as one of Elden Ring's best legacy dungeons, despite what it has to offer. An area can have a great atmosphere, a memorable story, and a fantastic layout, but if the moment-to-moment gameplay falls flat, then the entire experience suffers because of it. I for one am able to love Elphael despite its mechanical shortcomings, as I tend to deeply appreciate atmosphere and environmental storytelling, even more than actual raw gameplay, but you can't expect everyone to be that lenient. Nevertheless, I had a great time analyzing everything Elphael has to offer, and I hope you guys enjoyed this different type of video. It'll probably be some time before I make another huge video essay, and I'm still trying to figure out what type of video I make the best. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a spectacular day.